So let's talk about the monstrous goal of critical theory. Now, Mythicist Milwaukee, the myth-informed chaps, you're going to want to go give them a follow on Twitter while you still can, because they've been doing an amazing job going through all of these critical theorist, academic training courses that are posted online, these, Zoom calls, and taking the parts out where the people are just, mask off, well, actually, we're terrible. And this is where it all leads. So let's play the first clip.
Anti-Black terror is a faction of what makes America great. So I am going to go to a slide. Dr. Alvin Toussaint, back in 1971, he says, I think we have to establish that racism, white racism, is a mental illness. Many white social scientists would like to define racism as something that is normal, as a cultural variant. As long as we approach it that way, we really don't deal with the pathology of racism itself. It's like saying that cancer, because a lot of people have it in this society, is somehow normal. Dr. Bobby Wright, in his writings, The Psychopathic Racial Personality and Other Essays, he stated, this is back in 1975, in their relationship with the Black race, Europeans are psychopaths and their behavior represents an underlying biologically transmitted proclivity with roots deep in their evolutionary history. The psychopath is an individual who is constantly in conflict with other persons or groups. He is unable to experience guilt, completely selfish and callous, and has a total disregard for the rights of others. One of the best methods that can be used to measure the psychopathic traits of the white race is observing and analyzing their universal overt behaviors and attitudes towards Blacks. Psychopaths simply ignore the concept of right and wrong. By ignoring this trait in the white race, the lack of ethical and moral development, Blacks have made and are still making a tragic mistake in basing the worldwide Black liberation movement on moral suasion. It is pathological for Blacks to keep attempting to use moral suasion on a people who have no morality, where race is the variable.
Right. That's sane, isn't it? That's the starting point.
He never substantiated the idea that anti-Black terrorism is what makes America great, which I assume there's more quote around that somewhere.
Sure,
but the fundamental point there, him being that white people, because he's saying racist, white supremacy, but they believe that all white people are white supremacists, and you cannot get rid of that, no matter what you do, are mentally ill.
Yes, and they're psychopaths, particularly. And this was part of an anti-racist workshop for the University of California, San Francisco School of Medicine.
They're hiring Tariq Nasheed.
Calling white people psychopaths. Europeans are psychopaths. I mean, they only ended slavery. They didn't have to. They only belligerently went around the world ending slavery. They didn't have to. What a psychopathic thing to do. But this is the sort of basic perspective of critical race theory, and this is where it goes on. Let's go on to the next one, where they complain that, well, meritocracy doesn't work. Let's see why.
But I have a mentoring program. But I am not blind to the fact that there is structural racism in engineering. Like, I'm not, this whole colorblind meritocracy, just stay down and do your grind. It doesn't work. Like, it's not just that resilience and grit is harmful. It does not work, right? It largely, too many Black and brown folks to leave in the academy for this to work. We still only have 2.5% of all engineers are Black. 3.8 of all, engineering faculty, 3.8 of all engineering faculty are Latinx. Like, these strategies of just being colorblind, pretending that your color doesn't matter, it doesn't exist, and, just publish in the top journals, even when folks do that. A sister just graduated from Georgia Tech University with a PhD with a damn good world-renowned professor, can't get a job.
So there we go. Meritocracy doesn't work because Black people ain't getting those degrees.
You know what's really funny about this? Is it shows how secluded Americans are from the rest of the world.
Yes, it does.
Because in my experience, there's a very funny thing going on in engineering in the rest of the world, which is that Arabs and Turks are massively overrepresented because they get engineering degrees, and they don't come from the privileged countries of ore. Like, these countries are, like Turkey, fairly normal, let's say, if not poorer than most of Europe or whatever the hell it is, because of their government management, but not other story. But you have people coming from much worse conditions than American Blacks who are overrepresented in engineering on a global scale everywhere else. Are they not Black and brown?
I doubt in Nigeria they're saying that meritocracy doesn't work because Black people don't get degrees.
Are Nigerians not Black?
They are Black.
They're part of the white race
and
now?
they do get degrees. So
how is she going to define what Black is?
Well, there must be a reason that Blacks in America aren't sticking it out. But she's saying, well, that proves that meritocracy doesn't work. It's like, no, that's what meritocracy is. If you don't earn it, you don't get it. Just because you're black doesn't mean you're given it on a plate. Just like because I'm white or anything, I've never been given anything on a plate.
Well,
I've had to earn it.
There is our argument.
Exactly.
That blacks are 13% of the population, therefore we deserve 13% of the engineering roles.
But that means you've got to commit to the jobs and don't drop out halfway through and then you don't get it, because that's what meritocracy is. So she ironically proves that meritocracy does work. It's just that I guess that she thinks that black people are entitled to things, which is not meritocracy. But again, that's not about equality, is it? And that's the problem.
Well, it is about equality.
Well, no. Meritocracy isn't about equality. It's about excellence and achievement. It's what they would call aspirational, and that's not something that she cares about. But anyway, moving on to the next one. This is a boarding school teacher who, Paul Rossi, he's a maths teacher, and he thinks that he probably earns around £300,000 a year, $300,000 a year in his day job at a private boarding school. And let's hear what he has to say about his boarding school work.
Imagine as a person of color, and I'll leave you thinking about this, as a person of color, how it feels to work in a place where my expectation is I'm on call 24/7. To work in a place that also pays my bills and my meals. To work in a place where I report to my landlord. I don't know if you caught that all that adds up to a feeling of enslavement. When will we stop having boarding schools feel like plantations? And understanding that there were some masters who deeply loved their slaves and surely needed them, and at the same time didn't care for them the way they needed to be cared for. Can we rectify that in this moment?
Hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's Dr. Rodney Glasgow.
Who thinks he's enslaved.
Who thinks that boarding schools that pay him hundreds of thousands of dollars a year are like plantations. And there's a form of slavery. And the master isn't caring for him in the way he needs to be cared for.
I mean, the slaves usually make more than the slave owners.
Not normally.
Like, imagine he's making more than the president of all that borders.
Yes.
300 grand a year.
I mean, like the average two-person family wage in the United States is $77,000 for white people and $66,000 for black people.
I love how it's like a 13-year-old's take on politics, just like society is slavery.
Thing is, the way he's saying it, you can see the big grin on his face as he's putting that across. You can tell that he's lying.
Yeah,
he's lying. He knows this.
As he wears his multiple pharaoh symbols.
Yeah, exactly. He's sat there in his lovely house, with his wonderful job where everything's taken care of, and he's like, yeah, this is basically enslavement. It's like, well, then quit. Something the slaves couldn't do. They could quit. But again, so if you can make people feel bad about their amazing jobs that pay amazingly well, you're on the road to achieving the critical race theory goal. And of course, what you want to do is make sure that these people can think of nothing else other than critical race theory. Let's play the next clip.
At first talked about the word anti-racist, but Abraham X. Kendi, who says, when we choose to be anti-racist, we become actively conscious about race and racism and take actions to end racial inequalities in our daily lives. So again, we're not just having conversations. We are thinking about it, and we're taking for me, humbly, it has been taking over my entire life, where I think about the things that I buy, the toys that my children are using, the ideas that I share with my classes,
her entire life. And she's a teacher.
Yeah,
so good news.
You see these with these kind of activists when you talk to them. What does Jordan Peterson call it? It's like ideological programming or something, where you're not talking to a person anymore. You're talking to an ideology.
Yes.
Within a person.
But it's their entire worldview, their entire mindset. They can't think outside of this. That's what we would call a cult. So you're in a cult of people who find the place in which they live terrible. They can't stand being so rich and healthy. And they think that white people are evil. And of course, you can't teach about anything else. Let's play the next clip.
And that's exactly what create opportunities for the discussion looks like as well, right? As we create those opportunities for discussion, we really create that space to talk about racism and racial equity and allow our students to learn it at that level to where it can actually allow them to transform those systems and institutions that they exist in, right? Establish and enforcing group norms. We started today off with our community agreements. That's a perfect place to start, especially when you're in communities where there's individuals who are fighting against teaching and learning about race and racism. It's really important to establish those community agreements so everyone comes into this space with that open heart, open mind, and they want to center what's right for all our kids, right? And if they don't agree to those community agreements, there's the door.
So there we go. It's about changing things. It is about racializing things. It is about making you hate what already exists so that they can come in and change it. And if you don't like that, you can leave. See where this is going? And of course, you can't have a person outside of this. So I don't know where they're supposed to go when they leave. I suppose they're supposed to just leave the institutions and allow the power to reside in the hands of these obvious racists. Let's play the next clip.
What is Open for Anti-Racism? So in November of last year, I saw this call for participation, and you all will see this too. This program has been funded for another cohort. So I was part of the inaugural cohort. I was fortunate enough to be selected for this. So this Open for Anti-Racism was an inaugural program statewide. It's funded by the Gates Foundation, and 17 of us from all community colleges participated in this because it has been and continues to be a process. The first process was the racializing of me, right? I had to decenter my own self from whiteness. I had to recognize where I was just a binary person with a binary worldview, not inviting and welcoming in the rest of the world. And why was that? Well, I'm a product of my environment. So I forgive myself. I have forgiven myself. And so now the work becomes, I got to learn it, right? What I was not taught, I have to go learn it. And like my students, I'm doing some things for the very first time. And it's easy to decolonize the syllabus. I did that really early on, right? How do you decolonize your syllabus? The first thing I would tell you to do is put some images in there of some folks who look like students. That would be helpful, right? And to look at your language and say, is this binary language? How do you tell that? Well, if you don't do this, is that a penalty? Part of the question, like, why do I teach, right? What does it mean to teach? That was the very first questions I shared with you. Why do you teach? What does it mean to teach? Right? And so decolonizing the syllabus must mean that you've decolonized yourself. Because if we say something that isn't true, then we will soon show up as an imposter in our classes.
So you can see what's going on there. Funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So the internationalist, globalist organization is funding critical race theory. But the important thing is they're like racializing me. Because before, they were just an individual. They were an American, right? They were Dr. Crumpton or whatever her name was. And so she was like, an individual American going about her life, being normal. And then it's racializing herself. So she's, instead of assuming herself to be a sort of an American individual, she's now associating herself with the class that is black, the universal identifier, a category of black. So that means that now the people all over the world who are black are the same as her, even though they're not the same as her, and they would be like, go away American. But then you've got the repudiation of her national culture. And she says, I'm a product of my environment. So what? There's nothing wrong with your environment. But the point is to try and make them feel like their environment is wrong. And so they can be in their $300,000 a year jobs. They can be, privileged doctors. They can be succeeding everywhere. And yet they're sat there going, no, this environment is evil. This is wrong. This is bad for me. Even though it's demonstrably not bad for them. It's done them unbelievable, untold amounts of good. And I bet that literally any person in Africa would switch places with those people and say, yes, I'd like the £300,000 a year job, please. I'd like to be a doctor or whatever it is, please. Unfortunately, I've got to walk 5 miles to get water every day. Things like this. It's like you can see how they're going out of their way to make people hate themselves for being Americans. That's a colonized status. And so they have to try and repudiate that in order to change it. And so the goal is this clip here.
And why I studied race more in college, because I was like, wow, their American experience is very different than mine. And I felt before I went to college that I was very American. Then I went to college, like, oh, I'm not American. But before that, I thought I was very American. I couldn't live anywhere else. And I thought that this was, but after there, and I've lived in other places, but, I didn't until college and interacting with these white men that I realized how it's a system. Yeah. And it's like, it's always working. And that's why it's so dangerous. And so it's so fatal, and it's so perverse and so dangerous.
Right. And that's it. So he no longer feels like an American. So the moral will to defend that thing that you have and the place that you are and the country that you have and your identity, everything about you, you feel ashamed of. So when they come in with their deliberate way of how can we change these things through the language, through the circumstances, the environment we create, how can that all be changed? There's no resistance to that. You don't go, oh, that shouldn't be changed because there was something good about it. Everything good about it has been stripped away, ideologically, not materially. Materially, everything is still fine and still the same as it was. But now it's been ideologically stripped away. And so you're not even going to defend that thing which has provided you with all of these goods. And all of those people were black, right? I'm not saying, oh, look at these white people who are benefiting from the oppression of black people.
Except for the last guy.
No, the last guy was black. He's half black. You know, American blacks aren't really black, are they?
No.
They're very light skinned.
Do you think... sorry, I forget myself, but like
Yes.
Americans are weird.
Yes, they are. But he you know, is black by the American standards, right? And so...
Sorry, but he's so obviously white. It's just...
Well, look, man, it's, you know, America.
Yeah.
But the point is, but the thing is, even if that can apply to white people as well. Like, one of the women, in fact, was white. And she's like, you know, well, I hate America. America is evil. And so when the critical race theorists come in and say, right, we're going to change all of this, there's no resistance. There's no will to resist. And so that makes their job so much easier. And the point is to literally dissolve what it is to be an American. So people willingly repudiate their American identity, which that person did. I felt like an American. And now I've been through college. Oh, I'm not an American at all. Well, there we go. You've been brainwashed. That's what that is. You've been brainwashed into an anti-American cult.
Because that also doesn't obviously represent reality. You're as American as all the rest of them. I can't distinguish you from them as a foreigner.
Yeah. As foreigners, you're definitely American. Stop pretending that you're not. But there we go. That's the monstrous goal of critical race theory. It is to get the population of the country to dissolve itself as a people, as an identifiable, self-identified people. That's the point.
If you enjoyed that segment from the podcast The Lotus Eaters, you can go over to lotuseaters.com to subscribe to get access to all the premium content we have.
The way the site works is that you have bronze, silver, and gold tier subscriptions. The bronze being £5 a month and allows you to get access to all of the premium content and leave comments on the articles. And we've got a new feature for the silver tier, and the silver and gold tier, which is having all of the premium articles accompanied by an audio track of a very smooth British voice reading, as you can see on the screen there. It's only an 11-minute listen, or it's however long it takes you to read the article. So that's for convenience. So that's for gold and silver members. And we've also got all of our regular great content, which we're all really proud of. I mean, the premium podcast we have here is Progressing to Destruction, where that's just a lot of work where it went into examining exactly what the consequences of mass immigration have been in Britain. And this was a great deal of effort to put together, and we didn't really want it being taken down from YouTube or anywhere else, so we're hosting it on our site, and we're very pleased with, well, what is, I suppose, a bit of a negative response, but not because of anything we've done, but because of the facts of the matter, it seems. But we also do various other premium podcasts, like The Contemplations, such as Are There Human Rights? Well, it depends on whose definition of what a human right you are using is. And of course, we do our regular history podcast called Epochs. This week's was The Sea People, the Terror of the Bronze Age. I really enjoyed doing this one because there was a great collapse about 3,000 years ago of the entire economy of the Eastern Mediterranean, and it seems that a bunch of piratical raiders may have been partially responsible for that, and possibly inspired the Trojan cycle from Homer. So we discussed that in that. And of course, we do our book club. For some reason, I decided that we'd highlight the George Orwell ones that we've been doing. So we've got his Road to Wigan Pier, and of course, the classic 1984. And I'll probably do Shooting an Elephant next. Have you ever read that?
Not heard of it.
It's really interesting. It's about George Orwell's time as a colonial administrator and police officer in Burma. And at one point in his narrative, an elephant goes on the rampage in a village and is killing people and destroying houses. So he has to go down and shoot it. And it is an absolutely fascinating look at the sort of colonial dynamics. The reason I haven't done a book club this month so far is because I'm currently going through the Critical Race Theory Bible. As you can see, it's 500 pages long, and I'm about 2/3 of the way through. And there are going to be many very in-depth book clubs coming out of that, because the things they believe are crazy and conservatives need to know about them.
But anyway, if you'd like access to all that premium content, please go over to lotuseaters.com, subscribe. Thank you.